Before the show begins, I wanted to give a disclaimer that we had internet connection issues that interfered with the interview itself. Not to worry, it is still comprehensible and a very enjoyable podcast. It's a very important message, and I hope you enjoy.
Baruch Hashem, you're a bad Jew.
Shalom.
Welcome back to Bad Jew. It is awesome to be here. Baruch Hashem. I'm so glad that you're listening and that you're watching. With me today is Eli Sandhaus. Eli Sandhaus is an Orthodox Jewish actor. He also is producing a lot of his own projects. I'm really excited to have him here. Eli, welcome to Bad Jew.
Thank you so much for having me. It's an honor to be here.
Absolutely. So at this point, you're familiar with our content. You know that we are notorious for our Bad Jew Challenge. The Bad Jew Challenge is to tell your life story in 4 minutes. Are you ready?
All right, start the clock.
All right. And yalla.
All right. Hi, my name is Eli Sandhaus. I was born in Brooklyn, raised in Miami. I went to high school in Queens. I actually boarded. Then I went to Israel to study abroad for 3 years. Then I studied in YU for a little bit. And now I am an actor, an author, a podcaster, and a mental health advocate. I guess to delve into how I wound up, going from yeshiva to being an actor, bit of a jump there. But basically, my journey really began on March 1st, 2022, when I spoke at Stomp Out the Stigma, which was an event held in Yeshiva University. The premise of the event, or the purpose of the event, is to destigmatize mental health. And I spoke at the event about having OCD and my life experiences. If you want, actually, I'll link the speech because unfortunately, there's no recording of it, but I have my script. So, I would love to share that with the audience if they'd like to read it. I'm quite proud of that. And it was just such a cathartic and life-changing experience. And I knew that I had to act on it. So well, pun intended, I found myself in New York City in the hub or one of the hubs of the acting world. And, and I'm attending school there and I've wanted to act my entire life. So I went for it. And then along with that, eventually that led to me getting a leading role in The Raven of Baltimore City, an upcoming feature film. But at the same time, I also wanted to express myself in multiple different avenues. So I wrote a book called I Am You by Eli Sandhaus. But my baby, is the Public Diary, which is an initiative to publicize vulnerability. The Public Diary began shortly after Stomp Out the Stigma, where I realized I wanted to bottle that experience that I had and give it over to others in order for them to experience it as well. And so it started off with me just writing in diaries and then handing them off to random strangers and encouraging them to do the same. And then it slowly started gaining traction on social media. So I created a website and now an app is in development and I'm just super excited to be here, and I'm excited to see where Hashem takes me next.
I love it. Eli, that was awesome. With 45 seconds left on the clock.
45 seconds to spare.
And right there, for those who are watching, who are on YouTube, you'll see there's a banner at the bottom to please get in touch with your vulnerability. Follow the Instagram account at the.public.diary. It's supposed to be incredibly cathartic and really just good for the soul. But Eli, mental health has kind of been a very pivotal part of your journey. We're going to be talking about that today. You said in your 4-minute life story, you said that the speech that you delivered was a cathartic experience. Why was it cathartic for you?
It's interesting. Prior to the speech, I saw my OCD as being like my personal demon. It was this monster that I had to fight, and it was my battle, and I was all alone in it. And then suddenly, after giving this speech, first of all, when you confront something, it makes it so much more tangible. Like I find, just a quick sidebar, one of my tactics for dealing with OCD is delineating. Meaning I find that when things are ephemeral and they're kind of, just ideas floating around your head, then they can grow to out of proportion. But when you delineate and say, like, okay, wait, what I'm really dealing with is A, B, and C, and that's it. Maybe D, if you got a lot going on or whatever, we got a whole alphabet. But once you delineate, it becomes much more tangible, and you see what I'm dealing with and what I have to do next. So once I spoke about having OCD to this crowd of people, it became so much more manageable. And in addition to that, I also realized that I'm not alone in two ways. Because I'd said that, like, OCD kind of felt like my demon, that I had to fight with by myself. But then I realized that, well, number one, a lot of other people have mental illnesses or whatever, some sort of mental health situation that they're dealing with. Statistically, over 50%, and this is an old statistic, this is like 2 or 3 years ago, over 50% of all Americans will deal with mental health issues at some point in their lives. So this is not something, I realize this is something to not be ashamed of. This is not something to be secretive about. It's like, some people have diabetes. I have OCD. And then the second part that I realized of how I'm not alone is that, so I said, number one, that there are just a lot of people who also deal with similar issues. Mm-hmm. Then also I realized that everybody is so supportive, and I didn't have, I guess, like such a feeling of connection to others until I realized that there were just people coming over to me crying in the hallways, telling me their stories and, DMing me, and it was just writing me notes, slipping notes under my door. It was a crazy, crazy experience just to hear so many stories from so many people and realize that we're all in the same boat. We all have our trials and tribulations, and they may come in very different, forms. Some people might have OCD, some people might be something vastly different, but we're all in this game of life, and we're all trying to figure it out. So, it was cool to really see the humanity in others and everybody just getting together and, trying to help each other out.
Well said. Well said. And, I'm curious, does it at all bother you when people say, oh, I'm OCD about this? People make those claims all the time. Like, oh, I need my paperwork on my desk in a certain way because I'm very OCD about it. Does that ever bother you out of curiosity?
Not particularly, like I maybe that's just a me thing because mm-hmm. I tend to be like I pride myself in this, that I am very non-judgmental. Mm-hmm. Now that could be because, whatever, that could be kind of a feedback loop, but I tend to find that, like, I don't really mind.
Yeah, fair enough.
Really mind. It's a colloquialism that people use. And would it be appreciated? Do I think on a deep level it could be harmful? Potentially. But until society gets to a point where we're like, okay, we got to be careful with how we speak about mental illnesses, it doesn't really bother me.
Fair enough. I will say this. You earlier mentioned that 2 or 3 years ago, they came up with the statistic that 50% of Americans specifically deal with.
I believe it was U.S. and Canada.
U.S. and Canada. So 50% of North Americans deal with mental illness. I don't believe
Mexico was included.
Okay. All right. Well, 2/3 of North America. Anyway.
Yeah.
My thought when I hear that is that I gotta imagine that even more than 50% of people deal with some kind of mental illness. And I
Oh,
think that
for sure.
honestly, we're always learning it. And I think that the answer to that statistic is that the other 50% haven't admitted to dealing with their mental illness.
Exactly. That's just what's diagnosed.
Yeah.
50% is diagnosed.
Right. I'll tell you right now, I go through fits of anxiety that leave me up at night, whether it's related to business or social dynamics, whatever it is. I go through my own spectrum. So when you were describing some of the demons that you fight, I could totally relate to it. With that being said, though, I want to transition into the topic of the podcast. We're 10 minutes in. We haven't even asked the main question. And it's because you're so darn interesting, Eli.
Thank you.
So, Eli, I'm going to ask you the question. Perfect transition. Do Jews care about mental health?
Oh, 1,000,000%. Now, it's actually funny. I didn't want to just say it, but I feel like it has to be said because there are stigmatisms and stereotypes against it that people it's not exclusively the Jewish community, but I feel like in a lot of insular communities, people tend to not talk about things that are aberrations from the norm.
Mm-hmm.
But I think that number one, mental health awareness is the norm. And number two, just a fascinating, like, quick Dvar Torah that I heard. So there are like 5 orders of being, states of being, right?
Okay.
For this is for particularly for practicing Jews, right?
Okay. Mm-hmm.
And the 5 orders Kabbalistically are a domain, something which is physical, like a rock; a tzomeach, something which sprouts, like a plant; a chai, which is any sort of living creature, so any sort of microorganism to a mammal, anything in between.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's a medaber, which is one who speaks. So one who is, it doesn't literally have to mean speech. It could just mean anybody who is conscious.
Oh, I see. Okay.
Anything with consciousness.
Uh-huh.
And then the 5th order, I guess. Now, I'm prefacing by saying that there's no like hierarchy.
Mm-hmm.
It's simply just like classifications.
I see. Okay.
Classifications. And then the last classification is a Yisrael, right? Somebody who is a mensch, somebody who is not just conscious, but is also responsible, or a healthy member of society.
So these are different states of being that impact that I guess Judaism labels someone based on their behavior, I suppose.
So it's not quite, we don't label people based on their behavior, but just a quick thought that I heard about that was that each of these is like a somewhat graduated state of being.
Okay.
Right?
Uh-huh.
So a person has to first be a medaber before they can be a Yisrael. Meaning a person first has to be a healthy, conscious human being before they can be an active participant and a contributor to society, you know, and a religious figure. So similarly, I mean, it's not similarly, it's literally what it's saying, that like a person has to be physically, emotionally, mentally, and spiritually healthy before they can even begin their religious journey.
I see. I think that's actually really intriguing, that's kind of a preliminary for that. I think that speaks to people who kind of enter certain phases. I have a family friend who has gone through a lot in his life. He's a young lad. he's a young guy, and he has a very young energy about him. But growing up, he had a lot of social anxiety. He never connected with people, especially in large groups, the way that I've had an easier time with. This is a strength that I have and a weakness of his. And I think he recently came to terms with that. And upon coming to terms with that, he went to Israel. And I think with the people that on that organized trip, he got that sense of community with them, and he really had a good bonding and rapport with the people that were on that bus with him. It was an organized religious trip.
Okay,
Um,
cool.
but then what happened from that was he went through his own emotional and spiritual religious awakening, and now he's pursuing Judaism, very similar to where the state that I was in back in July of last year when I had my religious awakening in Israel. With that understanding in mind, with that kind of mindset, I think that that kind of does make sense in terms of the 5 different layers. I'm going to call them layers. You called them orders. I think of them as like, it sounds like layers to me, like layers that,
Layers might be a better word.
yeah. But you acknowledge the stigma that is kind of in the Jewish tight-knit communities around mental health. And so actually University of Houston wrote an article about it. There are a few different quotes here that I think were very striking to me that definitely caught my attention. University of Houston wrote this, that in the Jewish community, suicide rates are high. There are a lot of different gender, political, and age-related pressures across Reform, Conservative, Orthodox Jews, according to Robin Gearing, UH professor, social work director of Center of Mental Health. So, he reported on that. And then he also, later on in the article, it pops into this area. And it talks about that they are working with colleagues to better understand mental health stigma, treatment beliefs, and barriers that are across different Jewish community denominations to create better pathways to care as part of the Jewish mental health study. Many Jewish individuals seek treatment while others may not, due to stigma or lack of knowledge about the mental health system. Some Jewish individuals seek treatment with physicians and counselors, like myself, and others talk to their community elders or rabbis. This reminds me of something that I heard from, he's not quite a mentor, but he certainly is a leader that I look up to in my world. I told this gentleman, he's an Orthodox Jew, that I see a therapist. His response was, you don't need one. You just need a rabbi.
Oh,
And that I decided not to get into it with him because I'm young and he's old and he has, older opinions about that. But those kind of attitudes, I got to imagine, attribute to the statistics that article is referencing. Would you agree? Or am I out of left field in that?
you definitely could be onto something. I just want to point out that there were no statistics
You're right.
in that article.
You're
right. Like what is considered a high suicide rate? I don't know, but like
that's fair.
So like it's a very complicated situation.
I mean, there was a resource there. There was the MH Rights Research Center. So it did come from a research center with credibility to it.
Right.
Yeah.
I'm just curious.
Statistics, you're right. The statistics weren't there. You're right.
In relativity, what's considered a high suicide rate? Meaning, like, is it specifically in the Jewish community as opposed to other minorities, or is it specifically because of that demographic, or there's a lot of different factors that go into it.
Yeah.
What I would say in response to somebody who says that, like, I just recently had this where I make videos for this mental health organization, mm-hmm. right? Like quick little motivational videos and stuff on social media. And I actually just made one 2 days ago, and I wrote about I spoke about the rules of Sandhaus Jiu-Jitsu.
Okay. Yeah. I like this. Okay. I'm listening.
I coined the martial art of mental health fighting. And the first rule of Sandhaus Jiu-Jitsu is seek professional help.
Boom.
So I gave an analogy, right? If a person were to be going through open heart surgery, they wouldn't hand the scalpel to their friend. They wouldn't.
Hold my beer. Okay. Okay. Right. That's perfect. Yeah. That's a great analogy. Absolutely.
So I don't understand why we would treat the psyche or psychological ailments any differently. When you have an issue, you seek professional help. That's what we do, and I can't respond to somebody. There are religious extremists, and I'm going to call them extremists simply because they are outliers, not in any way because I am denouncing their religious beliefs, simply because they're outliers. I happen to disagree with their religious beliefs, but there are people who say that you shouldn't go to doctors in general because it denotes a lack of faith. However, the Torah explicitly says that God created doctors as messengers of his will, and that we have to go to doctors in order to get better. That's what we do. You know? So like I can't begin to have a conversation with somebody who doesn't believe in medical help, in professional help, because like we're not connecting on the same page. I subscribe to what the Torah says, and the Torah says to see doctors. So
it makes it makes perfect sense. It reminds me of a joke I heard. You probably have heard this joke before, Ellie, and that is that there's a tsunami and there's an entire neighborhood that is completely submerged in water, and the only parts of the neighborhood that are above water are the roofs of these houses, right? And so you have this guy that is on his roof praying to God, saying, please rescue me, please, I'll be a better Jew, I promise, right? And so first a raft shows up, and the raft says, come on in, I'll take you to safety. And the guy says, no, I'm waiting for God. The next vehicle comes, it's a motorboat, and the person on the motorboat says, hey, don't worry, I got you, come on the boat. He says, no, I'm waiting for God. And now the water's up to his neck, and finally a helicopter shows up and drops a ladder, and the megaphone, the helicopter pilot says, come on up. And the guy shouts as loud as he can, I can't, I'm waiting for God. And of course, unfortunately, this man drowns. And when he gets up to heaven, God says, how come you didn't take any of it? He says, I was waiting for you. He's like, what do you mean? I sent you those 3 things. What do you want from me? I didn't deliver the joke very well.
But it's all right.
But that's the same exact principle in this case.
Yes. That we can't. Ein somchen ala nes is a rule in Gemara that we can't rely on miracles. We have to live in the surroundings that we are given and take opportunities that are before us. Wow. There's a similar joke that is kind of illustrates the inverse.
He's going to be better at telling jokes, by the way. Just watch. Okay, go on. Yeah.
So, a person is in a parking lot and they're circling and they run out of hope, and they say, God, please, I know we don't talk that much, but please just give me a spot. And then all of a sudden a car pulls out and he goes, oh, never mind, God, I got
it. There we go. And he has a better joke teller than I am.
Thank you.
Yeah,
but it's the same idea that we have to recognize that God, this is a principle of Jewish faith, that God acts within nature, except for very few nominal times that God does not act within nature. Like, for example, the splitting of the sea and the 10 plagues in Egypt, but these are very, very specific cases that, according to some Jewish philosophers, are really even within the realms of nature, and that there are scientific explanations for them. Whatever. I'm not saying that they are necessarily scientifically possible. I leave that to Jewish philosophers to decide. But the point is that in our everyday lives, God is not sending eagles dropping whatever on wings of eagles that we're gonna fly out of here. Like, right. That doesn't happen in day-to-day life. In day-to-day life, God presents us with opportunities, and we have to seize those opportunities.
Yeah, well said. And I think, speaking of the philosophers of the Torah, there are some other texts here that I found from another article written by My Jewish Learning. My Jewish Learning is a really great site, by the way, but you know, it's been talked about before. Do classical Jewish texts discuss mental illness? And it was fascinating because I never knew that King David had suffered depression. The term shagoan, an antecedent term for the common Yiddish expression of meshugana or crazy, which I think a lot of people would find very distasteful to compare depressed to crazy or meshugana. But
right.
I thought that
I think that that's just a problem of translation and definitions.
Yes.
I don't think that the word itself has a negative connotation.
No, I agree.
It's been utilized in negative connotations, but etymologically, it's referring to a state of mind. Mishugas means like scrambled,
right?
And it's not a negative thing. It's just simply an observation.
Right, that's right. And then later on in that same article, this pops up as well. It says, according to the traditional Jewish law, someone who is mentally incompetent, a category known as shota, derived from the Hebrew word of wanderer or vagrant, is exempt from most religious obligations. So what you were saying earlier about how you need to, achieve those different layers to yourself, and that'll open up this, deeper religious path. That to me was really intriguing because that totally lined up with what you were saying. About that. And I didn't understand it when I first read that article, when it first popped up and it said that you need to, have that they're incompetent, that they're not going to be ready for, religious practices. I thought that was fascinating. I never thought to myself, oh, I need to be mentally healthy to be religious.
My rabbi told me, he's like, you got to be a man before you can be a mensch.
There we go. Whoa. I like that. On the flip side of that as well, you also have religious figures, whether it's Jewish or not Jewish, that do commit crimes. And sometimes these crimes, they're either white collar or, you see religious figures both in the Jewish community and outside the Jewish community that commit all kinds of heinous acts that are not just. And so then you have religious figures that are doing it, and so suddenly, I guess that poses the reality that you have people that are more religious than religious figures themselves the moment that they start committing those crimes.
Yeah. So just like a quick quote from Rabbi Daniel Kalish.
Yeah.
Rabbi Daniel Kalish, I'm not sure if you're familiar with him, is the Rosh Yeshiva of Waterbury, or Yeshiva Atar Shmuel of Durham. It's a high school that's become very popular in recent years due to its like atypical approach to handling teenagers. It's very new age and very like loving and warm. And Rabbi Kalish said, whenever discussing people who identify as Orthodox in context of their misdeeds, don't call them frum, meaning like religious. He's saying, don't say like, oh, you heard about that frum guy who committed tax fraud? Like, no, that's not frum. That's not religious.
Right.
So it's like, I'm not going to make judgments on people who commit misdeeds, because I'm saying everybody does on different levels. But to associate one's misdeeds with their religious ideals it's a mistake. It's a mistake.
In other words, it's not that they're being a bad Jew. It's that they are a Jewish person who happen to have done a bad thing.
Correct.
And there is a difference in that statement.
Correct. This is, I think, the core of what you're trying to get at here.
Exactly.
But you got to learn to dissociate your ideals and your misdeeds. Here's like a quick little saying that I know that we didn't really get into like the philosophy end of things, but philosophically in Judaism we say today's bechira is yesterday's bechira is today's hashgacha, meaning yesterday's free will is today's divine intervention. Or I guess that's the best way to define hashgacha. But basically what it means is that free will exists in the present moment, and our circumstances, meaning our past, we have to view it as if we were created right now, and that we have a choice to make right now. And that yesterday what we did was handed to us. And that it's not that it's not our fault, because we still have to do tshuva, we still have to repent for it.
Mm-hmm.
But that we can't get hung up on the fact that, like, oh, I did something wrong yesterday, therefore I am a bad Jew. No, it's, oh, Chaz. Woohoo! Hey guys, thank you for listening to Bad Jew. I guess we're signing off now.
Shalom.